reminds me of an acronym. I don't know if any of you have heard of Tara Brach. She's a motivational speaker and an author as well. She has an acronym called RAIN, which stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture, right? So if you think about whatever you're feeling or you're experiencing, right, whether that's meditation or just any other creative outlet through your podcast, like Michael said, recognize, right? That's that R. Acknowledge, right? That's kind of just that first way of getting it out there. Even sometimes saying it out loud is an incredibly healing experience because, like Michael said, society condones that, right? Or they don't offer the forum to be able to do that. I mean, do you all know there's a mental health awareness month? Because it's not really publicized much on social media. There's a couple of stickers whenever I post something mental health related that say it's okay to not be okay or mental health matters, right? But if you look up a lot of these other big issues in the world, those kind of take front and center. And so it's always made me curious why that is, right? Is it because, and this is just me, I'm always a very inquisitive soul. Is it because it's such a big topic and it's something that can't easily be diagnosed, right, through a step that maybe, right, the world just feels it's too much to touch? Because I believe everybody wants kind of a quick fix, right? And mental health is something that most of us maybe live with our entire lives, right? It can get better, it can get worse, right? We go through episodes, but I don't really think it's something that ever completely goes away. It's just part of the human experience.
I agree with that. Does anybody else have any input? Would you like to talk about anything in particular, your podcast itself, or how you bring what your experiences to the podcasting universe?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you now.
Okay, I had to get in and come back in. I'm sorry, go out and come back in. I'm sorry. I'm Jennifer, and just a few things I've heard from each and every one of you. It fills my soul with happy joy because, oh my God, we're having the conversation on mental health. So this is very important to me as well. My podcast is Not As Crazy As You Think podcast. And I wrote a book, and then COVID happened and I still hadn't gotten my agent. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? The publishing industry is going to like collapse on itself. And I have no, this was my whole drive. So I decided to create the podcast at the end of 2020. And so I'm coming up on my year anniversary. So my podcast is about mental health and mental illness. And I come at it from a very particular perspective. Some people call me radical. I say, there's a lot of people out there and we all have a different way of approaching this matter. And I do believe that one of the reasons why, say, there's not enough movement behind a mental health acknowledgement, admitting to ourselves or sharing, we have problems with mental illness. It's because of the stigma, and the stigma, I believe personally, and again, this is where I come from, is because a lot of what's offered to people is traditional Western psychiatry. And while and again, no judgment on anybody who's taking medication or feels that they want to go down that traditional course of action for treatment. But there are lots of different opportunities for you to go about healing that are alternative. And that's really not pushed enough. And I do believe if that was pushed more, people wouldn't be so afraid. And I'll tell you why they're afraid, because of a person's background like my own, which was horrendous because I was labeled very young at 22 with a very severe label. And I had a near-death experience and they didn't believe me. So I became a delusional, person after that. And from that point on, I had these experiences where I was in and out of these states of consciousness. And many shamanic cultures would say, hey, this is what we go through. These are gifted people. These are not mentally ill people. But there is a whole huge sect of the population who are being labeled with the worst of these disorders. And yes, we need assistance. We need something. But we don't need to be told that we're completely abnormal, that our biology is faulty, that we will never heal, that this was the narrative of the professional help that was given to me throughout the course of my entire life, and they still have the same narrative. So yes, I come from a particularly critical perspective, but in my podcast I do offer alternatives. I have a therapist, I have a dream therapist, I have a naturopath, I have all these people who I interview. A medical marijuana doctor, another alternative route. There's psychedelic medicine now. So yes, and creativity. I'm an artist, so it's all about pushing these alternatives out there. I do really, really, really believe the more people would get help if other courses of action were given to them. So that's basically where I come from. And I thank all of you, because you're all doing it. And it's so exciting.
Man, can you tell us, since we didn't get, what is the name of your podcast again?
Not
Please?
as crazy as you think.
As crazy as you think.
Yeah.
Chat, if everybody has a link or they want to type their name of the podcast in the chat, I can take a screenshot and make sure that everybody receives each other's information so we can stay in touch. This is an amazing discussion. And Jennifer, if you could see, my head couldn't stop nodding. I couldn't agree with you more. A lot of my presentation was about that, about bridging, Eastern versus Western.
Awesome.
I brought in the documentary. I don't know if you've seen it, Meeting the Beatles in India. It's one of the best documentaries. I mean, the Beatles is my favorite band, and how they wrote 40 something plus songs at their time in the ashram, right? Because it was really the first time in the late 60s that yogic tradition, right? The Eastern traditions were introduced to the Western world. And the fact that it's still 2021 and so much of this is taboo or woo-woo, to me, I think is crazy, because that's how we can heal ourselves, as you said, naturally. I'm with you 1,000%. It's literally everything I preach about. I've had astrologists on my podcast. I've had a human design expert. I've had a flute meditationist. Sometimes they do live demonstrations on there. I pull tarot cards. I mean, that also has literally changed my life. And so that's a medium that I think also is this kind of taboo that I like to bring to my podcast as an alternative, right, way of healing and thinking about the world. So
that's amazing. I'm so thrilled, because let me just share the near-death experience I had on the way home from India. And I went to India because of the Beatles.
Oh, no way.
So these things do drive us, and they're very, important. And thank you so much. My gosh, I'm so thrilled that there's someone else out there that's pursuing these alternative
So we have a
ways.
couple of things in common. I'm old enough to really understand the Beatles because I grew up with them. So